Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another eMarketer Tech Talk, where we host amazing guests from all areas of media, ad tech, and MarTech. I'm Henry Powderly, VP of Content at Insider Intelligence. Today, we'll explore how the mobile landscape has changed and why mobile advertising is about so much more than banner ads. I'm joined now by our special guests. We have Will Margaritis, Senior Vice President, Global Commerce Solutions at Reprise Commerce, and Joe Esposito, Vice President, Agency Partnerships at InMobi. They have a great presentation for you, and afterwards we'll open it up for questions about what you've learned. You can also use the chat window to submit your questions for the Q&A or to communicate with your peers. Now let's get started. Joe, over to you.
Right on. Thanks so much, Henry, and welcome everybody. Like Henry said, I'm Joe Esposito. I lead agency partnerships for InMobi, and really excited to get into this conversation with Will over the next 40 minutes or so. So thanks everyone for joining. Just a quick overview on InMobi, right? So InMobi is a leading mobile technology platform, really driving monetization for publishers and end-to-end connected content experiences, helping advertisers understand, identify, engage, and ultimately acquire customers. We power the world's largest independent mobile in-app focused exchange with global reach of over 2 billion users across 40,000 directly integrated apps and 190 countries with, I think most importantly, right, privacy, identity, and addressability at the heart of everything we do. Couple that with our emerging owned and operated consumer platforms and our mobile performance platform, delivering critical lower funnel KPIs. My team's role is focused on developing and driving our partnerships with the major holding companies and independent agencies as well, working with stellar partners like Will here and Reprise Commerce. How is that for a handoff, Will?
Perfect, and thanks, guys. I'm Will Margaritis, Senior Vice President of Global Commerce at Reprise Commerce. Reprise Commerce is the commerce arm of IPG Media Brands. Our mission is to help brands grow their presence online and to grow profitably online. We do this through media, both commerce-specific media, as well as adding commerce hooks and measurement to more mid and upper funnel media. We do this through experience, we do this through content, and we do this through retail operations. Whether a brand is looking to run shoppable display ads, to launch live commerce, to make their demand planning smarter and do smarter forecasting, we're here to help. We've got 350 commerce experts globally in our team of 2,500 performance marketers, and again, part of IPG Media Brands, so we tap into all of that IPG data and media and creative excellence.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. And just wanted to, give another welcome here to the first annual Beards and Blue Shirts convention. Welcome, everybody. We did not coordinate all this, but Will and I do have some pretty solid beards, which we talk about all the time.
It's a bit of a uniform.
It's a uniform, exactly. So I, really at InMobi, and obviously this is not kind of, an earth-shattering start here, but really it starts everything that we do. It all starts with the customer journey, especially with mobile and mobile devices, and just how intimate they are, right? And how just part of your everyday life, every minute, every hour of the day. And with that, right, our goal is always to connect people with their passions, helping advertisers build awareness, turn them into hand raisers, eventually making a purchase, and then most importantly, keep them coming back. I mentioned this before. Just going beyond engagement, you want to keep these folks coming back, and I think that absolutely plays into so much of what Will and the Reprise Commerce team does, right? So Will, how important is it for Reprise to understand your clients' customers' journey specific to mobile? Like, how much does that come up in your discussions in your client meetings?
So I'll say that I mentioned the funnel earlier in my introduction, but none of us really talk about the funnel other than it being easy to identify where media is running. We talk about that consumer journey, right? The purchasing journey. This is the framework that's now sort of replaced everything. It's all about understanding what phase the consumer is in, what they're doing, what they need to hear to move to that next phase, and of course, how we can not only slide them from phase to phase, but measure it. And I'd say mobile has become a very big part of that, because with shopping, just thinking about how we all work on our own shopping, when I go to the supermarket, I'm taking my phone out. I'm actually looking up new products that I see, going to either the website or going to Amazon or Walmart and reading reviews. I do almost anything with my phone out, and walk to the mall and see how many people you don't see in the Gap or in the food court that are on their phone. And shopping is increasingly happening through the phone in the United States. So all of this means that we need to be thinking about what the consumer's doing, how they're engaged with their phone, and how we can actually hit them with the appropriate messaging when their phone's out.
Yeah, 100%. And both Jersey guys, of course, we have to mention a mall in a in a webinar, right? But to that point, Will, how much are your clients asking specifically about mobile? This is always a question that comes up within InMobi, and obviously, as we go out and engage with both brands and our agency partners, how much are they calling out mobile and a mobile strategy, or is that more kind of just a part of, to your point, the larger customer journey and just a natural sort of element to it?
It depends on the category that they're in. And I'd like to say it's based on sophistication, but that's not right. At the moment, I'd say it is very category by category, where a lot of brands that are starting to tie omni-channel together are getting very interested in mobile, and mobile is coming up very often. And when we're pitching to them or when we're building new strategies for them, they do have that expectation that we have mobile covered. I'd say there are other brands that are maybe a little bit less mobile specific that aren't quite there yet. And I think that's just a huge opportunity for them, because they're usually in categories that aren't diving into this as much, which means there's an opportunity for them to own a lot of space. There's really a lot of real estate and a lot of clever thinking that their competitors aren't taking advantage of yet. So we love to get in there with them early and actually bring some of the learnings we have from the more mobile native or mobile centric categories and brands to some of the brands that aren't fully there yet, and give them opportunity to really be the category leaders.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, and there are plenty of conversations that we have with mobile first clients, mobile first kind of thinking agencies, but to be able to kind of move the other ones that aren't that way sort of into that way of thinking, just based on the behaviors that we see, that we all know on mobile. I think it's definitely an exciting kind of way to approach things. So good segue right into how obsessive we are with our phones, and just a lack of focus these days, right? And really attention span. If I think about, waking up this morning, I'm checking the Knicks score, I'm checking the list, fish show set lists, like I'm literally jumping around from news to entertainment to whatever it is. And that really, it's hard to capture. We all know it's hard to capture consumers' attention on that device, despite how intimate and how sort of one-to-one it really is versus so many of the other devices. So when you think about all that and how we've traditionally been, in the last few years, really focused on viewability, kind of looking at that as the status quo, and it's done wonders for so many of us, right? Really looking at that as, what are the chances that your ad is actually being seen, right? Is the creative visible for a certain amount of perceptible amount of time on the screen? And that served us all well, right? But given the lack of attention span and just the desire from both advertisers and agencies to sort of better measure all this, in my conversations with the holding companies, IPG will included, more and more over the last few years have been sort of driving towards this idea of attention, and call it the attention economy, especially with identifiers going away, and really starting to think that, look, this change might be necessary. So with brands primarily using these viewability metrics and trying to sort of get into this shift, Will, how much are you guys within Reprise Commerce, and how many of the conversations you've had across IPG have really gotten into attention and this idea of, was your ad actually seen, right? So considering screen real estate, completion rate, aggregated time on screen, all these sort of elements that we can look at for attention. How much are you guys thinking through that and trying to drive it?
We're thinking through it a lot. And I often kind of refer to these as next gen KPIs, which depending on your company, maybe it is next gen, maybe you've been doing this for a while, but just thinking about advertising, and I've seen statistics that vary between 85% to 90% of ads that consumers see during the day, they completely ignore. And maybe they pick up some hints of it, but it's sort of that dirty secret that a lot of people don't like to admit to. But if you ask them, what's the last ad you saw? Usually people can't remember. And for that reason, I don't think it should be a dirty secret. We need to be thinking about, okay, how do we make sure that our ads are in that top 15%, that top 10%? And the type of data that we're talking about here, the attention data, becomes critical for that, because all of a sudden you can plan around that, you can optimize around that, you can measure, you can see what's working and what's not working, and actually make sure that an ad that you're putting up there is going to be in that top 10%. It is going to be engaged with. And if it's not, you're not getting their attention. You've got the tweaks that you have to make. And that's where I think this all becomes critical, is really that planning, optimization, measurement funnel, flywheel, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously within InMobi, and our focus on mobile, on in-app, we firmly believe that as we are becoming the leaders in exploring this idea of attention on mobile devices, and again, really in mobile apps, there's definitely a huge opportunity to kind of leverage the amount of just sort of natural attention that we all have toward our phones and the content on those screens, and where this sort of becomes a natural way to measure and really prioritize mobile. Back to the point about mobile first, like we do feel like this is kind of the way to go, and the way that we're going to push things forward. So it's definitely exciting times in the mobile space around attention. So when you look at attention metrics specifically, right? It's sort of complex, but at the end of the day, there really are two primary kinds of input signals that partners are using to arrive at attention metrics. Because really today, the attention metrics are proprietary to the vendors, to the folks that are sort of building these out. So there's this biometric data that is primarily through eye tracking technology. The key here, though, as we think about that, well, that could definitely be creepy, right? But the key here is that's through opted-in panels. So the folks that we are able to understand, the direction and where their eyes go, that's all through opted-in panels. So definitely a sort of privacy safe way of doing this. And then there's this sort of placement and performance level data that includes those metrics that we mentioned before, like screen real estate, interactions, completion rates, et cetera. I think the audibility piece is super interesting as we think more about how IAB is changing some of their video standards, et cetera. So Will, as far as attention metrics, where have you guys focused here, and how much attention to this have you been driving?
Well, I love that you start with the eye tracking data and say not to be creepy. And it's funny because when I talk about this with brands, I try to caution that this isn't the dystopian nightmare. And we've all seen the patents out there, right? Where if you're not actually staring at the screen, the ad stops. Or I think there's a patent out there from a decade ago for a television that if you turn away from the commercial, it actually stops and you have to stand up to restart the commercial. We're not talking about eye tracking for any of that stuff, but
Right.
eye tracking is something that we're actually very excited about because it just gives more data, right? We're not talking about making sure the consumer is watching something, although that's a part of it. It's also understanding what part is the consumer actually paying the most attention to? What are they most engaged with? Where are they looking away? If it's a movie trailer, are we seeing, there are certain parts of that trailer they're most excited by? If it's a product detail page, are there certain areas that they're actually reading very closely and certain areas that they're not? This gives us a lot of data points to really optimize and to make sure that we are getting that right ad in front of the right consumer, because let's be honest, attention is something that's we're asking consumers for, and we've got to be a little bit respectful of how we're using that attention to make sure we keep getting it. And eye tracking really does help a lot with that optimization and just having that data point. Another area that I think we've learned from working with your team, actually, Joe, is that attention is different across age groups, right? And when we've been launching things, we've learned from your team that the 60-year-old is going to have a longer attention span than the 25-year-old. It doesn't mean that you're getting a different level of engagement with them. It's just as we grow older, we pay closer attention. And this is where we've worked on some of these, the data points that we're getting back from you to make sure that we are understanding how we're getting it and optimizingly accordingly. And your team's been great at this, at really helping us understand very much what we're looking at and make sure if we are comparing two different pieces of creative to campaigns that we've run, we're not just looking at attention in a bubble, but also thinking critically about what was driving that attention, and is something that's gotten more attention necessarily better than something's had less, to take it to the next step.
Yeah, it does. Like, all this feels like next level. Truly, as far as the data points that we can all start to leverage to optimize. To me, this changes things for the next 5-10 years easily. I do want to touch on it's a good segue, just the fact that you said that understanding attention and understanding the need to bring attention to the consumer, but being respectful in that, right? If we are throwing ads in front of them on this device, right? Really on any device, but we want to be respectful of the time that we're actually asking of them. And I think a lot of that can come from creative ad formats and just sort of bringing those cool experiences to them versus just flashing up a standard banner ad or a display ad, right? So high impact creatives, I think, especially on the mobile device, is such an important way to really drive all this. When you think about different placements and formats, whether it's in-feed video, rewarded video, the sort of call it like the playable or gamification of an actual creative. This is all really, really cool stuff. And oh, by the way, it performs really well, right? You are being respectful. You're giving the consumers actually something valuable. And this sort of variety, I mean, this is just a small sample of the types of cool stuff that you can be doing. But these different placements and formats really do drive those new experiences and ultimately engagement, and probably keep them coming back, right? You're eventually going to get to that conversion or whatever you're hoping for, right? And I think it's cool here, the couple examples that we have, and Will, especially with your focus on commerce with these CPG brands, but then you also mentioned entertainment and trailers. Like, those are the types of especially with entertainment and trailers, like those are the types of promotions and campaigns that you really want to leverage video, and you really want to have that full screen experience, versus just a fraction of the screen, right? So how much are your clients, again, coming to you about these newer creatives, or are you leveraging these to sort of open up a more interesting conversation with your creative shop, sister shops in tow, to really get them thinking more about mobile and how important that sort of, that idea of mobile first creative really is, versus just leveraging, existing assets?
So it's all about mobile first creation. I think that if you're not thinking about that placement, if you're not thinking about what the consumer is going to be seeing when they have it, again, to your point, you're not necessarily being respectful of their attention. You're not going to keep your attention. One of the ways that I sort of like to describe it is that media is finding the consumer and opening the door to them, but you need the right creative to actually have the consumer walk through that door. It's going to be the creative that is really responsible for holding the attention of the consumer. I know I'm going back to a little bit of the cliche, but media is finding that right person in the right place, but you need that right creative for it to all actually work. And we do see brands that just think that they can repurpose what's out there, and they're not going to capture that attention. They're not going to keep that engagement. Whereas if we look at these three examples here, I mean, first of all, they get to the point pretty quickly. They immediately let people know exactly what they're watching. There's that call to action on the bottom of all three of these. And I'm still surprised how frequently I see things on my phone that don't have a call to action to it. And a call to action is so critical. And then, of course, there's the interaction. There's giving the consumer something if they're actually going to give it attention. It can be the gamification, and I think there's opportunity to extend that. But even just the advertisement in the middle, being able to swipe back and forth and getting something that's changing and some reason to want to explore it a little bit and be playful. We really do try to make sure that at the planning phase, we have media together, we have the insights team together, we have the creative team together. We're actually planning out who the audience is, what the audience is going to be doing when they're served these ads, why they're going to be caring about these ads, why they're going to be clicking through. And you need to really have all of those answers together at the same time. If you're putting the same ad on linear TV that you're putting on connected TV, that you're putting on Instagram, that you're putting on your mobile ads, it's going to be a lot less efficient in each of those areas because it's not being tailored to what story the consumer needs to hear at that time and what the consumer is doing that's going to keep them engaged and keep their attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as we think about engagement, we think about attention, sort of all these things that we've been discussing so far, it's sort of natural to dive right into video and just how important video overall is, right? So should be no surprise here that to any of us that the amount of interactions and actual time spent on mobile and really with that mobile video, right? In terms of hours spent on mobile, think of it this way, right? Literally half of a normal workday, not during work hours necessarily, but in aggregate, half of a normal workday, 4.5 hours, almost 5 hours is spent on your phone, right? And we know that 90% of that is actually spent in apps, according to a recent study. And to me, I think, we've been talking a lot about in-app, and I think that there's just sort of a natural passion point with apps, right? If you're downloading an app to your device, like you expect to keep going back to that app, whether it's a game, a retailer, an entertainment site, whatever it is. And then there's shopping, right? So 85% of consumers are starting their shopping journey on mobile. So you think about all this and you think about the performance and really the time that's spent watching video on your mobile device, where 75% of all global video is viewed on mobile phones. So it just becomes increasingly more and more important. And then just to quickly round out, video is still the number one performing ad unit, right? It's the most immersive. It's that full screen experience. They can view those ads, view those spots the way they were meant to be experienced. Compared to mobile web, compared to desktop, you might only get about 10%, 25% of the screen. But you really want, best practices here would always be to really, leverage app and drive that sort of that full screen experience, that most kind of optimal experience, where that ad is playing to the most captive audience, again, where they're spending the heavy majority of their day. Will, how much are you kind of focused on video, and how much are you thinking about all these stats and the level of engagement and the importance of that sort of immersive experience on the device?
Definitely focused heavily on video. And I will say seeing these stats always makes me a little shocked, but then I think about how every week my phone buzzes and tells me how much more I used it than the last week. And we are constantly on our phones, right? And even if we're on the couch watching TV, we're probably still on our phones. And we try to get ahead of that. So knowing that that's what our consumers are doing, and I sit on the couch watching TV while on the phone. If it's Gen Z, they might not have the TV in front of them. It's just the phone. And we know that video is how they're interacting. And a lot of this is us sort of following what we've seen happening in the East, right? Where live commerce has taken over what's happening in Asia. And we've done some fantastic work out there with having video that might be for, to give an example, a food brand that's showing how to make full meals using most of their products, some other products, and then you can click through at the end of the video and it will take you directly to the local supermarket, and you can one button add all of those ingredients to cart. And that's completely driven by video. That's not something that really works if you're just doing images, if you're just doing text. seeing the punchy video, having the full sensory effect of having the music that goes along with it, seeing how easy it is to make that recipe, and then how delicious it looks at the end, really ends up driving that click to cart and that conversion. And it is something that's more common on mobile because we're scrolling through, we're interacting. You've seen Amazon adopt this where they've put video in their search results. It happened first in mobile because that's where they knew consumers were going to be primed to do it. If we're on our laptops, we're not as primed because we might be at work, but when we're on our phones, that's generally more relaxation time, and that's where we want to make sure consumers are getting these video units.
Absolutely. And it is so cool to be in roles like ours where, we're part of global companies. We have global roles, right? And where you can really but you can really, evaluate the behaviors that are happening in the East. Because we all know those are naturally gonna come here to the West, right? So especially on mobile, and especially within InMobi, we're headquartered in Bangalore. So much of our product innovation kind of it launches and starts and launches in APAC, in India, and beyond. And we've seen exactly Will, to your point, around live commerce and just how important video is there. And naturally, it's been important here, but it's only gonna continue to rise. So yeah, great points there. And then I think just as we at InMobi, Will, you within Reprise, as we think about what does this all mean for the advertisers? I mean, at the end of the day, it's helping them find the right size screen for video, right? I think advertisers and agencies need to take a significantly closer look and evaluate the right format and environment for their video strategy. Will, how much does this come up where you can kind of speak to the increased screen real estate, higher recall, and again, this sort of idea of full screen video versus some of the sort of less impactful units that you can deliver?
Yeah, and it comes up often, and I think there's a real sort of reckoning in the advertising industry where a lot of us are trying to make our ads not annoying is probably one of the best ways to put it. It is looking at that respect that you're giving the consumer in return for their attention. And we've all been on the sites that got, not to call out one of my favorite websites, but purchased by a private equity company that ended up putting advertisements all over the place, putting video all over the place. That's all playing at the same time and competing and sort of gets lost. It's better to have that one impactful advertising unit that is giving the consumer something that they're actually going to enjoy instead of taking them away from what they're enjoying. And this is a lot of the way that we're using the units and the attention metrics. It's all about trying to give the consumer something that they won't find annoying, that they're going to want to interact with, that they're going to actually enjoy and appreciate. And I think a lot of this did come from some of the mobile apps first, where they were finding ways to weave advertisements sort of seamlessly and more naturally into what they were doing than the old desktop design. And this is where I think these metrics become so important for optimization is, again, you're going to do this, you're going to put an ad on someone's phone. You're going to try to put it in a place where it's not going to be overly intrusive while they're trying to read an article, and it's going to be done in a way that they want to engage with. And if you're not getting it right, you're going to know immediately from those metrics that you're not getting it right and you need to make changes. You need to optimize. You've got the wrong creative there. It's not the wrong spot, just the wrong creative. Let's get back and get it right and make it working for us.
Absolutely. I mean, that literally is our mantra here at InMobi, is like, we don't just want to deliver ads, right? We want to deliver experiences. We want to deliver quality content, right? And I know we've all used this in our own pitches and conversations in different ways, but it's true, and it all speaks to lack of attention and all the things that we've been talking about in this conversation. But yeah, I mean, it literally is driving our product roadmap, and the launches that InMobi is going through this in 2023 and beyond.
and you saw me laugh at ads, not experiences, because I feel like we've all been saying that for so long, but I think we're now on the precipice of actually being able to turn some of the more standard ads into experiences because we can actually measure how they're being experienced.
100%. And the technology is getting there, and consumer behavior is allowing us to really drive those now versus before. Yeah. So, to that point, and going from video to rich media, again, there's so much cool stuff that you can be doing with rich media. And this is, there's a pretty good sample here of all the different types that you can deliver. Interactive display, there's different technical functions. At InMobi, some of the coolest days that I have is spent with our, killer creative studio that's been developing so many of these rich experiences, and looking at the performance and just seeing these guys kind of get to work and build this really cool stuff that, honestly, so much of it we've never really seen before. So, Will, again, to kind of focus on your role in commerce and come at it from that lens, the things that jump out to me here, the examples that jump out to me here, shoppable, location, store locators, even like this, the voucher or coupon generator. How much of this kind of, gets you going and enables you to enter those conversations with your clients and ultimately get them excited about the cool stuff that's out there.
So this is where it feels like it's often picking different parts off of a menu and putting it together into something incredible. Or I probably should have said ingredients instead of parts off of a menu, but maybe it's different Lego pieces and you're combining them in one case to build a plane, in one case to build a Lamborghini. But it gets really exciting because we're seeing a shift in how commerce is being talked about, where it's no longer just lower funnel or retail media networks, but now brands are starting to think of every activation as being a commerce activation. And it doesn't matter where it's running. It's all about how it's going to tie back to that purchase. And there are a lot of different ways here that we can do it. And I had mentioned earlier how people might be in the mall on their phone. Well, we know where their location is, right? So we know if they're in the mall, or we know if they're near a consumer electronics store. And if you're representing a brand that's sold in one of those stores, now you can actually hit them up with some of the advertising to let them know, you're near a store that's selling this product. You're the right person for this product. Hey, here's a discount code that you can get with the vendor coupon, or maybe it's a spin the wheel and see what you can get. But hitting that person when they're actually in the right spot, and they might not be converting on the phone, but they're going to be able to convert because of what they just saw on it. And now you're getting that brick and mortar conversion. You're getting some of that measurement. You're building the relationship with your retail partner by sending the consumer to them. It becomes hugely powerful, I think, even right down to being able to do shoppable. And maybe now, if you're a company that actually has the store in the mall, you can have the serve them the ad, show them what it is, and it can be one click buy, but then they can actually pick up in store. So it's taking mobile as really one of the ultimate omni-channel devices, because it is on the consumer at all times. And if we know where the consumer is, we know the behavior that they're likely to be exhibiting.
Yeah, 100%. And I was, working through this, I was thinking back to, I worked at a local SEO firm, right? A local SEO technology company. And just the importance of the store locators that we were building, and how important they were to local search and SEO, and just the fact now that you can leverage those and drive them into actual creative to just sort of support the importance thereof. There's just so many different sort of pieces like that even before you get to the store, to your point, you can help them get there. You can help the consumer find what's closest to them, and potentially even what products are available, or what's actually on the shelf. So yeah, I mean, this is just such cool stuff that we can spend hours on.
Well, and it's also just about use cases, right? I joked earlier about the person that's on their phone while watching TV, but now we can also serve them an ad for an impulse purchase that 4 years ago was almost impossible to do online, but now it can be, again, click, send them to a retail partner that does last mile delivery, and now you can serve them an ad for snack chips, and they can actually have it delivered to their door within 15 minutes which previously it was almost impossible to connect some of those impulse buys. So yeah, there are just so many creative ways to do this.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to the technology and companies getting smarter and behaviors shifting to, to enable all this, right? So creative's great, right? But how much success do they actually bring? And a lot of this is away from the conversion happening on your mobile device or X device, right? So thinking about commerce beyond commerce, there's brand lift, there's obviously footfall traffic, sales lift, and InMobi works with a myriad of partners on all of these. Before I go down a rabbit hole, Will, where obviously these are so important to you, and where do your conversations take you around these, again, just sort of those conversions happening, call it offline?
Yeah, and these are some of the areas we love talking about because in commerce, a lot of clients are still very focused on ROAS, and ROAS has a time and a place, but ROAS is a limited KPI, but it's also a hackable KPI where there are so many things that can happen with it, where it can take credit for incremental sales, and really, if you're optimizing for ROAS, you're missing a lot of that. Sorry, take credit for cannibalized sales, and you're missing incremental. I think that as we're shifting how some of our clients think, or they're coming to us with new thinking, it's more about capturing the full halo. So you're running an ad somewhere, that in the consumer's purchasing journey, they're going to be converting where they want to convert. It might not be where you're expecting them to, so you need to account for it. And one of the things that I love most is that footfall traffic. A lot of brands are trying to pay attention to where they're sending the consumers. They know if it's a product that can be purchased at any grocery store, it's going to be purchased at a grocery store. And this is where partnerships like Foursquare become really important, because now you can actually pay attention to how many consumers got served that ad that are going to the grocery store to buy. Or if it's a brand that has their own retail locations, really getting into the details of which creatives are actually then sending the consumer to get into their car and go to that retail store. I've talked a lot in other times, if anyone's seen me, about how 2023 is going to be the year of omnichannel, and omnichannel has gone from a dirty word a few years ago to sort of the new buzzword. But it's true. It's all about understanding that consumers are going to be converting where they want to convert. And instead of trying to force them somewhere, it's about being able to measure and track them across that, to really know the impact of the media you're running and how effective that creative was.
Yeah, and I think now there's even this sort of natural desire to do more of that, right? I think especially coming out of the other dirty word, and in terms of COVID, people are obviously back, right? Don't need to go there, but I do think that advertisers and agencies realizing how much, realizing, right, how much actually happens in physical locations. It's just sort of the impetus for this new kind of focus here, and yeah, definitely exciting stuff. And then, Will, one thought I had here, just around, with retail media and offsite and leveraging a retailer's data to, target those consumers off of the actual retailer site, open web, in-app, et cetera. How much because naturally the consumer might not go back to the retailer site, right? They might go to the physical location just because, they're influenced by that ad, but they're not going to convert, especially in different categories. To your point, grocery, they might not convert back to the retailer site, but it might happen in that store. How much of this, in terms of footfall traffic or sales lift with an IRI, et cetera, how much of this is a focus for you guys?
It's a huge focus, and it's something that is, like you said, through Nielsen, through IRI, it's definitely available. It becomes with the brands identifying the people in the brands that are looking at it, that have the capacity and have the relationship. But
Right.
yeah, panel data becomes a huge way of knowing the impact, and tying then all of that media back to the footfall, then buying it back to the panel data to know proportionately with a statistically relevant group what purchases they made, and also sometimes then being able to see how they were building the basket, and were we able to influence that average order value? Are we able to influence lifetime value that's coming out of this? And we've worked with a client that actually built a a loyalty program that was all about capturing the sales that were not through their channels, but giving rewards to consumers no matter where they bought. In this way, they were actually encouraging consumers to take photos of any receipts they had with their product from anywhere that it was purchased, getting the loyalty rewards for that. But then that gives so much data for us to dive into and really see how the consumer is, number one, responding to the media, but how they're cross shopping, where they're actually going after seeing the media and buying. And there are so many things to learn from that. And this was a brand that wasn't expecting much first party data, but through this loyalty program, we managed to really bring them just this huge wealth of data that was one of the most entertaining things I've ever had to dive into.
Yeah, that's awesome. And first party data, especially for CPG, where they don't necessarily have a ton, it's critically important. And if you can find those unique ways to deliver that, yeah, that changes things pretty significantly. Yeah, so I think we can start to wrap things up, right? So based on all this, we got into a ton here. So what does this mean, and like what should advertisers, what should agencies be doing, and what to really be looking out for? So if we just kind of round out, right? There are, in addition to everything that we've been speaking to here, there are new ways to engage on your phone. InMobi and our Glance division, live in APAC, certainly coming east soon. But again, back to those, not just ads, but experiences, bringing experiences and ultimately advertising opportunities within those two lock screens and to the home screens of your mobile device. I do think that over time in the US, this is definitely gonna change things pretty significantly. Will, you mentioned this before, video is growing in different ways, right? With live shopping, obviously live streaming. And then there's all these shakeups with addressability. Mobile has definitely already adapted because we need to, right? Those mobile identifiers, it's a very different kind of game, and just kind of process on the back end in terms of how we can address addressability, right? So as far as what to do next, and we'll obviously jump in, based on the importance that we've surfaced here, just around mobile first creative, just how important the mobile device is to consumers and how it's just a part of their life nonstop. You really need to kind of think about reevaluating your digital media strategy and how can you hone in on mobile and not just have mobile be an afterthought or just another device that your digital campaigns are pointing to. Creating ads designed to take advantage of the mobile environment, it goes back to mobile first. I think that, again, kind of taking those existing assets just isn't going to work anymore. We need to grab the consumer's attention in different ways. And then, it's all about video, emerging ad formats. That kind of speaks to the rest of this here. Will, anything you'd want to add to wrap up?
Yeah, I do want to hammer home on live streaming and live shopping, just because I think that's going to catch a lot of brands off guard still, that we know it's coming. We know it's going to be here, and it might not be as huge as it's been in a lot of the Asian countries, but people that are under 30 are going to be doing enormous amounts of their shopping through this. And I think brands really need to start testing and learning now. They need to understand what platforms are working for them, where they need to be placing some of this live content, how they can be reusing this live content, and where they can be reusing it, and also getting ahead of their influencer strategy, because the consumers that are engaging with any sort of live shopping are looking for a certain level of authenticity from the influencers or micro influencers. That's a little bit of a shift from how it's worked in the past, because with it being live, it's a little bit more unscripted is probably the best way to say it. And that is a little bit of I keep saying a little bit, that is a shift in how brands need to approach this. It's a shift of philosophy. So brands should really start testing, learning, understanding what can go wrong, understanding how things go right, and understanding how to amplify this, because everyone's going to be on their phones watching videos and clicking to buy by the end of this decade, probably sooner. And the brands that are learning now are going to be the brands that adapt the best.
Yeah, 100%. And we've seen this at InMobi, again in Asia with our Reposo solution, which absolutely it is there for live streaming, live shopping, and just the insane amount of eyeballs and, most importantly, engagement that those experiences, and that sort of, whether it's influencers or it's live sports or concerts or whatever it is, the numbers are staggering. And yeah, obviously there's a lot of excitement that should continue to build around this concept, and having more and more advertisers consider it. But yeah, to your point, we'll ultimately test it. So yeah, again, exciting times to come. Excellent. So yeah, that's all we have today as far as the content. Henry, I will kick it over to you for any questions that may have come in while Will and I were doing our thing.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Will. Awesome conversation, really detailed, really rich, and you might not be surprised, but we have a lot of questions. So I'm going to jump right into those. The first question is, what are the most exciting new rich media ad formats? Maybe Will, you can take that one.
So we've covered a couple of these as we were talking through it. I would say shoppable might not be the newest, but this is the most exciting. So this is something that traditionally had been used very much by either retailers themselves or by the digitally native brands, but we're seeing this now moving to much more across category, that some of the travel and other non-endemic brands are really starting to dive into. And it's having that right call to action that's sending the consumer to the right place with the cart transfer. So it's exactly making it easier for them to learn a little bit more information and check out. We talked about location, but I think another interesting one is going to be chatbots, because we all see what's happening with ChatGPT, with AI. Being able to start building that into a little bit of what consumers are doing mobile, and pulling this into some of the activations, it's going to change optimization. It's going to change engagement. It's going to be able to give a way for brands to even add a voice to some of what's going on. And I know it's a buzzword. Apparently, the word was mentioned 200 times between Meta and Microsoft's most recent earnings calls, but that's because it's actually changing the industry while we're watching. And seeing this come to chatbots and seeing that being baked into a lot of these different ad formats is just going to be game changing.
Yeah, and I'll add there too. I mean, just the myriad of categories and verticals that those can deliver solutions for. It's it's not just a handful. It's just about everyone, right? So yeah, definitely exciting stuff to come there. One other that I would definitely add. We've been working a ton with our partners at Givesly. So it's essentially bringing charitable giving, right? Donation, bringing the ability to have a consumer make a donation to their charity of choice as part of the creative, right? And not only does that naturally lift sort of the brand perception, right? And showing that the brand is out there doing good and really socially conscious. But it also drives killer performance. Consumers are in there like, oh wow, I can actually do this. I can make a donation, and all it is a click of an ad. Really, really cool stuff. And at the end of the day, we're all in advertising, and we pound our heads against the desk every day for a lot of different reasons. But if you can be a part of something that's actually doing good, it's a pretty cool addition to the space for sure.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Here's an interesting question. Someone in the audience asks, are video ads equally impactful across every stage of the buyer's journey?
And I'll jump on that one and say, I honestly feel like they are equally impactful, because traditionally you'd think of video ads as just being upper funnel awareness, something that you're using to inspire consumers and help them discover new products. But no, I'd say at this point, they're still impactful for lower funnel. Number one, we're shortening that journey, right? Because if we are adding an add to cart functionality or a click to buy functionality, that means that some of these video ads are functioning across the entire journey. And that journey could be 15 seconds when the consumer's actually watching it. But it's also then telling different stories, because if you're going to have a product, you might have at the start of the journey video that's sort of explaining just why the product is unique and interesting and good in their life. And towards the bottom of the end of the journey, then instead you've got a video that's giving them a little bit more detail. And now that you know they're already interested in the brand and interested in the product, getting them over the hurdle of showing them exactly how it works. And instead of here's the product, it's great, it's here's how it actually works and how it's actually going to change your life. It's just a little bit of a different messaging. It's a little bit of a different narrative, but it's again understanding that the consumer's been interested, they've been paying attention, and just giving them those extra double click details into why they need to buy it. So traditionally, you do think of it more at the start of the journey, but no, we think it actually is still impactful straight of the way through, as long as you're evolving the video creative to go along with the how the consumer's changing.
Yeah, totally agree. It becomes classic storytelling, right? And having different different units serve different purposes and throughout the funnel. But video is impactful no matter what. So yeah, Will, you're spot on.
That's great advice. How about this one? Why in-app video over mobile web, desktop, or even CTV?
I can take that one. Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on it a little bit, but if you look at mobile web, you look at desktop, and I think I said this stat during the chat, but those video ads might only appear on 10, 25% of the screen, right? Where in app, sure, you could think of it as even an extension of CTV. There's a different level again of attention and behavior to that. And I think just the fact that you can have that sort of, full screen immersive experience really changes things. And I think that's just, if the consumer is in the right mind frame and you're delivering them the right creative and the right messaging, and you're being respectful of their time and all the things that we mentioned throughout. Yeah, I mean, I do think that this sort of all of those things combined, it kind of becomes this perfect storm of device, environment, behavior, and then ultimately creative to drive exactly what an advertiser or agency's partners are looking for.
Sure. Okay, and I think we've got time for one more, and this one sounds like a good one to end on. What is the first thing we should do if we want to start running successful campaigns on mobile?
So I'll jump on that from my perspective. And just full fair disclosure, I was an attorney in a past life, so I answer everything with it depends. And I'm going to say it does depend, but the first thing you should do if you want to start running successful campaigns is start capturing this data. Actually make sure that you're ingesting the data, and you're going to want to observe it for a while. You don't want to be making changes too quickly. You want to make sure that you can see some of the trends and adapt to it. So number one, set up the data collection and make sure that you're actually observing it and seeing what's changing over time. And then I'm going to say the 1A that you should be doing is really building around this. So making sure that, as I had mentioned earlier, you have your planning team in the room with your audience team, with your creative team, and you actually are thinking about what the consumer is going to be doing when you're serving them these ads. So the audience team bringing the understanding of knowing that this particular ad is going to be aimed at parents that are aged 30 to 45 and going to be capturing them when they're sitting at their kids' sporting events. And therefore, then the planning team can sort of talk about how big of an audience that is and how you can reach them. And the creative team can build the actual content that is going to be needed. It is about connecting those dots. If it's going to be successful, you really need to make sure that those teams are all working jointly in the same room.
100%. I mean, this is exactly what we talk about, in the conference rooms now at InMobi. Will, you should essentially be writing our pitch at this point, because that's spot on. But yeah, I mean, I think it is. It's and even at InMobi, like the amount of insights, the amount of data, and the insights that we can glean from that data just around app usage, by vertical, by category, et cetera. And how much that can actually inform not only what you might isolate as a mobile campaign, but your overall, digital or your overall kind of marketing campaign. It's pretty powerful stuff. And I think there's there's just so much data because of the, because of the time spent on the device, and how much we're all kind of interacting with, different apps, different sites, different advertising, that, yeah, I mean, it should at the very least inform your strategy. And then hopefully you uncover the fact that, yeah, maybe I should have this sort of not mobile first strategy, but at the very least have mobile be, a very sort of pinpointed piece of everything. And then with that, make sure that, yeah, you have that mobile first creative, because the existing assets just aren't going to cut it. And you're only going to frustrate the consumers that are seeing what's obviously not meant to be there in the first place.
Awesome. Well, Joe, Will, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. We really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thanks so much, guys.
Yeah,
right,
thank
before
you
we
guys,
wrap
and thanks
up-
to the audience.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Before we wrap up, let me take a moment to tell you what's happening across eMarketer's media channels. You can register for upcoming live analyst and tech talk webinars at eMarketer.com/webinars. On the audio side, don't forget to tune into Behind the Numbers, eMarketer's daily podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And finally, please do subscribe to our newsletters. Keep an eye on your email for the link to today's recording and slides. Thank you all for your time, and thanks again to Joe, Will, and the entire team at InMobi. We'll see you on the next Tech Talk.